fam, Miss B here. um, just wanted to pop in and wanted to talk about, I know I've mentioned this before, why I think everyone should have a therapist in their Rolodex somewhere. Maybe even two. One that deals with just general life stuff, and maybe one that's a little bit more specific to whatever your life history may be. If you've got abuse in your life history, then maybe someone that focuses on that. Or if you've got abandonment issues, or PTSD, or if you've got a particular medical diagnosis, maybe someone that focuses on that. I think it's just a good idea just to have them in your Rolodex. And the reason why I say that, well, I'm going to give you several reasons why I say it. But first, let me say that having a therapist does not mean you're crazy. It was referenced, I mentioned it once before, and someone said something about my being crazy and unstable and whatever. You don't have to be crazy or unstable to have a therapist. Here's the deal. Life is going to happen. It's going to happen to you, me, your kids, your mama, your daddy, the dog, and everybody else. Life is going to happen. And when life happens, you need somewhere to dump. You need a safe place to dump. You need a safe place to process whatever it is that's going on while you're strategizing, while you're kind of getting through it and making your plans to get to the other side of whatever it is. And so someone having a therapist who is continual in your life makes it easier. Let's say, for example, if you've got some particular issue, you're 25 and you've got an issue, and you go to whatever therapist and you deal with that issue as best you can at the time, and then you move on. 5-10 years from now, something else happens and you feel you need to kind of go see somebody, and so they don't have the continuum of the different things that have been going on in your life, and that makes it difficult. You got to spend time giving background and giving history in order just to get to where you need to be today. And that's something I found. And once you see my other videos regarding my journey with my autoimmune condition and some of the things I experienced with the different doctors there, then you'll understand why it's important to have a therapist that is continual, so you don't have to keep rebuilding history and building rapport before you can actually open up. And for those of you who don't know, I do have an autoimmune condition. I have Graves' disease, and there's some subsidiary conditions that go along with it that make it difficult for me sometimes to remember. It's not like Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that, but I just have to have cue cards. So I will be working from my little I can't even call the word, my little outline here, which is like 4 bulleted items that just kind of help jog me. But life is a team sport. Whether you like it or not, it's a team sport. And I say you build your team wisely. You build it full of people who are going to benefit you in some way. And that's, your friends, your coworkers, the DNA related people. Some of them you got to cut off because they don't benefit you, and some of them you want to keep in. It's just my recommendation that you have a good therapist, a good doctor, a good naturopathic doctor, osteopathic one, maybe even an herbalist as part of your life team. And again, because that's building continuum, consistency, longevity, relationship, all that other good stuff. So when you hit a major bump in life, all the background details are worked out, and y'all can get in and go with that thing and tear it up and be through it. Like I said, doesn't mean you're crazy. So when I endorse the push for a mental health, a therapist or any kind of mental health treatment, that's my limit. I don't endorse medicines. I don't endorse just because you're seeing a therapist means you're crazy. I don't endorse any of, some of this stuff is way, way extreme. Just because you're seeing someone, you've got to have a diagnosis. You got to be disabled. No, I don't endorse all that because life happens to everyone. Everyone is not mental. Everyone is not unstable. Everyone is not homicidal or suicidal or whatever. So, um, one other thing, therapists are trained to see your body language. They're trained to see the things that you don't say verbally, but you say with your body. They're trained to hear the things that you don't say out of your mouth. And they're trained to help you get to a point where you can actually verbalize those things. Um, it's good to have mama and auntie, and it's good to have them in your team as well. But the other part about mamas, aunties, cousins, or someone that you personally know is that 9 times out of 10, they're going to be biased in the information that they give you or in the manners in which they help direct you or guide you. Why? Because they have a blood tie to you. Your mama birthed you and she's had you all these years. So if she loves you and she's your number one cheerleader, then she's going to be giving you information based on that. If you happen to be like me and don't have a great relationship with your mom, then she's probably going to give you information to be more hurtful. So you don't want someone that's going to go too far one way, too far the other direction. And so that's why it's important to have someone who's detached, if you will, who won't have an opinion one way or the other, so to speak. It'll be more data driven or fact driven or that sort of thing. Or if, like in my case, I've got my therapist is it's very spiritual, and so that was one of the things I had to have because that's important to me. And so when I do have to hook up with her, one of the things I can depend on is she knows where I am spiritually. So certain things would not even come out of her mouth, so to speak, as far as, well, did you try this? Did you try that? Have you done this? Have you done? Mm-mm. Because she knows that that's not even in my realm of possibility. Um, what was the other thing I was going to say? And if you want, another good reason for having a therapist, if you want whatever's going on in life, if you want to be able to fully, honestly, openly put it all out there so you could heal, get through whatever it is, you need a safe place to do that. Guess what? Mama loves you, but mama ain't safe. Because mama going to tell auntie at some point, and auntie going to let it slip at the next family picnic, or your pastor, and I've had some pastors who, you go to them, and they're going to share it with the other pastor, or somebody else at the church. Or they might stand in the pulpit and talk your business. You don't want that. Because when that happens, you shut down. And then you don't have a safe place where you can just put it all out there. Whatever it is, there's no condemnation, as they say in the Bible. There's no blaming, none of that. You just put it all out. It's almost as if you can do a dump. And okay, I need to dump all of this. Now let me check out all these pieces to this puzzle, or these puzzles if it's multiple, and be a part of my team as I'm putting these pieces back together, whatever those pieces may be. It may be you're dealing with the death of someone who's very close to you and you're struggling through it. And it may take you 6 months, 6 weeks, or 2 years. And during that time frame, that therapist is they're helping hold your hand as you're putting your pieces back together. Doesn't mean you're crazy. Doesn't mean you need medicine. Doesn't mean you need to quit your job or be in the funny farm or anything like that. It just means you're going through a patch in life that needs help. That's all. And it needs help from someone who is trained, who shares similar values as you, and who will help guide you in a manner that hopefully is going to be best for you in the long haul. So, and I say bottom line, only a fool makes decisions without all the facts. So if you're not willing to put out all of you, dump everything out there and look at those pieces and put them together, then You might want to check yourself, because whatever decisions you're going to make, if you're only willing to make it based on a portion of the stuff, you're probably going to have some issues with that decision down the road. So, another thing, tragedies. Every tragedy in your life remains with you. That whole um, forgive or forget or move on and get over it, that's bullcrap. If there are issues that you got to forgive someone, yeah, you may be able to do that. Some people can, some people can't. It just is. And that's not the focus. The focus is more so you don't just get over stuff. You get through stuff, but it never leaves you. Once you get through it and get to the other side, you are a new person with that last experience now incorporated into who you are today. And if you continue to have experience, well, every experience continues to make you who you are. And so there are times when a new experience might kind of mess with some stuff from an old experience, or might trigger some things from an old experience. And there again, that's where having that continuum of care from a therapist that you trust and have vetted and all that other good stuff. Hey, give them a call. Hey, I need to come see you for the next 2 or 3 months. We got to work out some stuff. And you walk in, you tell them what you're dealing with, how it may have triggered, for example, my dog died. And my dog dying was difficult for me because I had not dealt with the death of my grandmother. And then after that, my cousin died. And this was like my ace boom buddy cousin, just, and I hadn't dealt with any of this stuff. So boom, boom, boom. And finally, when it hit me, it was like a ton of bricks. And I had to acknowledge the fact that my ace boom buddy cousin, who was like my number one cheerleader in life, was gone. And I didn't have him to talk to. My dog, who was like my second cheerleader in life, and no matter what I did, she rolled with me, and she was everything. People that knew me that didn't like dogs got to like my dog because they knew she was a part of me. She was gone. And then my grandmother, which was the first major death for me, and because I'd been given advance notice, if you will, spiritually about what was taking place and prepared for it ahead of time, I didn't really deal with it at the time. I just decided, okay, I had my little cry, and now let me be strong for everybody else that's not as spiritually advanced to deal with death, because death is a part of life. And so I had to go to my therapist and say, hey, look, death is on my mind. Not that I want to commit suicide or anything like that or kill anybody, but just the whole death thing. Now, I guess it's time for me to deal with it. I've got 3 deaths that I never really dealt with, and so I need to kind of get rid of that stuff. Instrumental. We were able to kind of talk through some things and help me find, and what I love about her is she doesn't tell me stuff. She lets me, because I am spiritual, I guess, and I'm kind of toying with my thoughts or whatever. She lets me come to my conclusions, and then once I get there, I get the yay, you made it type of thing. So that it's beneficial for me. Another thing, therapists can help you navigate systems and pathways and stuff like that. For example, if you need, if you're in a situation where you need to apply for some services somewhere, a therapist might be able to help you track down the phone numbers, track down the offices, things like that. Or suppose you need services, but you don't know what those services are or where they are. Therapists have an inside door, if you will, to help track down some of those services to help you. So they might make some recommendations. What else? Therapists are bound by law to maintain your confidentiality. So I kind of touched on that a little earlier. Whatever you say to them, unless you tell them you're going to kill yourself or kill somebody or, go blow up the Brooklyn Bridge or something along those lines, as long as you don't say anything like that and that's not your goal, everything else you're saying is confidential. Stipulation, though. Two stipulations to that. Insurance. Insurance has the authority to pull your records. They won't be able to pull it all without court orders and things like that. The other thing is if you're in any sort of legal matter that involves your medical records or your therapy records, then they can be pulled that way. But at that time, of course, you would know it. For example, if you, I don't know, you get into a fight in Walmart and there's a shooting and the other person gets dead, gets shot, and they die or whatever, and someone decides, well, you're crazy and you've been crazy and you've been on this rant. Well, if it turns out that you've been periodically over the years seeing a therapist, and you can pull out those records, or the police would probably, the DA would probably push to have those records. You can pull them out and show, no, you've been stable along the way, just regular life stuff. Dog died, grandma died, married, divorced, new job, new kids, new house, learning how to live with, you've changed your hair, or whatever the case may be, whatever you're dealing with when you go in there. And they can see just a regularly stable person, and they can see someone who is licensed to identify any issues, has been seeing you all along, and there wasn't an issue. So here you are today with this situation in Walmart and this dead person, and you're able to defend yourself and show, hey, look, you know what? I wasn't off the deep end doing some mass shooting or whatever the case may be. This was a one-time situation, et cetera, et cetera. So in that case, it would come in handy. But now, here's my gotchas. You can't just take any therapist. Excuse me. Need some ice, because my daughter went and got something, and my throat's been a little scratchy. It started yesterday. So I've been kind of, probably should be on tea, but I've been on ice because I like ice. So, but you can't just take any therapist. You have to do your homework. You have to think about to yourself, who are you? Who are your core values? And how far are you willing to go? And then you interview the therapist. If you're, like for me, I don't believe in the mental health meds and drugs and shock therapy and all those extreme measures. But of course, I've not been in a situation where it's, I think, been required or necessary. So for that reason, I don't agree with them. And so when I was building my team, and this was maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I decided that I needed to build a team, and my team needed to be my continuum of care over the long haul. When I was building my team, these were things that I looked for. So in my therapist, okay, what are the core values? Who are you? What do you believe in? What is your modality of practice? Excuse me. How would you handle? And I basically interviewed them. I didn't do insurance and all that. I would pay out of pocket for maybe the first 2 or 3 visits, full price. I want my full hour, whatever it is, and let's just get down to the nitty gritty. Let me enter, and I tell them I'm interviewing you because once we establish a relationship, I'm looking for something long term, and I'm going to be sharing my business and to some degree putting myself at your disposal in a lot of ways. So, and a couple of them, their eyebrows would go up or whatever, and but I didn't. As far as therapists go, I didn't have any issues with anybody saying, they weren't in agreement with it. Now, I've had some medical doctors, and that's going to come in a different video, but as far as the therapists go, and then I was able to narrow down after kind of visiting around and stuff and saying, okay, I like this one, and I kind of did a checklist, pros and cons, rated them. You get a 5 for this, you get an 8 for that, a 2 for this, et cetera, and went down the line that way. And that's what you have to do, because it's your life, it's your body, it's your mind, it's your soul, it's your all of that. And you are in charge of it. You have care of it. So don't entrust it to the wrong person. Do your homework, but get you someone on your team. And And another thing, get one that's not on the insurance if you can. If you can afford not to pay, I mean, if you can afford to pay out of pocket and not use insurance, that's better, because then they're not required to share the contents of your sessions with anybody so that they can get payment. Period. You write your check the day you go in there, they get their money, you have whatever care you need, and you walk out. If you're on insurance, you pay your copay, and then they have to send some sort of diagnosis, some sort of code. So now you have to have a diagnosis. They got to give you something. And the insurance has set diagnoses. So they got to pick something in there to give you a label, which follows you forever, you know. And then the insurance at any point can kick back and say, well, hey, we want more information. What is the status? This person has seen you for 10 visits now. We want to know how they're doing. Send us the progress notes, or send us XYZ or whatever. If you don't, you won't get billed or whatever, you know, you won't get paid and that sort of thing. So insurance has the right to step in and obtain access to some of your information. And we know the people in insurance offices are what? They're clerical folk. Most of them don't have medical background. And they're supposed to be bound by confidentiality. But if you've got an entire building of people passing through your stuff, how are you going to track that if no one is being confidential with your stuff? You can't. So I recommend, if it's at all possible, to get someone who's not, or not who's not on insurance, but who you can afford to pay out of pocket. If you can't, you go with insurance and you kind of play it low until you're able to get to someone that you're paying. The bottom line, if you pay out of pocket, then you control the information that is shared. Unless, like I said very clearly, unless you're a danger to yourself or others. If you're not a danger to yourself or others, unless there's some legal matter going on that you have to pull the records for, there is no reason for your stuff to be shared. So you can, excuse me, you can go in and do your dump, so you can work and put all your puzzle pieces back together the way they need to be, and move through whatever issue that you're dealing with at the moment. One other thing I wanted to say was, we don't, especially women, with all the poison that's being put into our bodies, the food, the water, the EMF rays from the TVs and the cell phones, and the these gas smart meters and smart TVs, and the emissions from the vehicles, just shoot the chemtrails out the sky. All of this stuff is affecting us, our bodies in general. And then women, we're at greater attack. We know the objective of population control and all of that, and who helps in that area? Women. We're the ones that birth the babies. So the attacks on our bodies are, if I did the stats on the different conditions, women are always more likely to develop over men, and then black women more so over white women and Asian women, et cetera, et cetera. These attacks on our bodies leave us vulnerable. And oftentimes there is an impact to our brain. Physiologically, there is an impact, and then psychologically there's an impact. And so you may have some level of depression from something just because there's too much crap in your water. And so now you've got a physiological issue going on, hormonal and nutrients and stuff are not jiving the way they need to jive in your body, and it's getting to your brain, and your brain is showing subtle signs of it. You go to a doctor and he tells you you're crazy, you need an antidepressant. No. You don't necessarily need an antidepressant. You probably need to, water filter and to do a detox and that sort of thing. But I say that to say, women get labeled with depression and anxiety and mental conditions just across the board, constantly, when most of the time it's not even that. It's something physiological going on, or it's just life issues, and she didn't have a therapist where she's dumping and putting her pieces together, so it's collecting up on her and collecting up, and before you know it, she's stressed. So a therapist will help you women, us women, to unravel, the stuff that gets thrown on us. We're expected to be Wonder Woman, Superwoman, to do it all, to bring home the bacon, to fry it up in a pan, to be a lady in the street, and you know what, in the sheets, mama, daddy, uncle. We're expected to be everything to everybody, and that's a heavy load. Um, One other thing I want to say, you can't do what a therapist tells you to do, hook, line, and sinker. Tell anybody that. You maintain your own autonomy. A good therapist will not give you instructions. A good therapist will give you a homework assignment like, I want you to go home and write a list of the 5 goals that you want to accomplish in the next 5 years. But a good therapist won't say to you, go home and produce, well, let me see what example, what they won't do. I don't know, because I haven't had any kind of give me explicit instructions. A good therapist won't say, go home and call your brother who you haven't talked to in 2 years and apologize to him because what you did was wrong or what he did was wrong and it's over with, just go call and apologize. A good therapist wouldn't do that. A good therapist, even if they thought that's what needed to happen, they would help you get there on your own. Maybe subtle suggestions, but it would never be an instruction for you to do. Because when you don't do it, then it comes across as either you're being disobedient or you're being, not meeting a goal or failing in some kind of way, which has an emotional impact, and that defeats the purpose of you being there. So, like I said, a good therapist will push you to do things, will encourage you to do things, will encourage you to see, to get wherever it is you need to go, kind of on your own, if you will, but with guidance. But you drive the session. Bottom line, you drive the session. Every suggestion a therapist gives you, weigh it before you do it. I had one lady I only had her for a couple months because actually something that she said, and she pretty much told me, well, you need to go home and do X, Y, Z, whatever, and that's that, and just be done with it. And I said, okay, thank you. And I hadn't been back because that let me know she was closed to where I was in my processing of it. And had I done it, I would have been doing something that I wasn't ready to do. And that would have caused more emotional turmoil for me in that particular situation. So, but bottom line, when life hits, and for all of us, as long as we are living, life is going to hit us. We all have at least one major thing in life that throws us for a loop. Some of us have 2 or 3, some have 5 or 6, just depends. But everyone, as long as you live, you're going to have at least one major thing in life that's going to throw you for a loop that you can't handle, period. That's just what it is. Doesn't mean you're crazy. Doesn't mean you're off the deep end. Doesn't mean you need to be in a sanitarium. Doesn't mean you need to have your kids taken away by CPS. Doesn't mean your husband or your wife needs to walk out on you. None of that. It just means this particular thing is a doozy and you need help and guidance in getting to the other side of it and getting to what life is now that you have this doozy issue as part of your life resume, if you will. And the last thing I want to say is you combine the input from your therapist with your life experiences and those things that you've created and built and learned thus far, along with the pearls of wisdom that you're going to get from, hearing mama or grandmama, auntie in your ear saying, baby, don't do that, baby. They may be long gone now, but their words still ring in your ear. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Or, people say honk in here. All those things that you remember grandmama, aunties, and mama used to tell you when you were little. You combine those pearls, because they're in there. Combine them with what you've come to know or develop or learn in your life, along with the input from the therapist. And you create the new you on the other side of whatever the issue is you're dealing with. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's why I think we all need to have therapists, because, again, life's going to happen. And if you're a melanated person, life's going to really happen for you. That's just the way it is here in the U.S. or in the world at this point. So, and you need a place to take that so that it doesn't collect up on you. And so you're going to have a place to take it where you can dump it, and you can process it, and you can pull out of it what you need to pull out. You can trash what you need to trash. You can take a few of the pieces of it and create something different with it. Um, just having a safe place, if you will, in a nutshell. So I hope this helps somebody. Again, just be very careful. Don't just go with the first one you see just because they say they take your insurance, or because they're convenient to the drive. Because sometimes you got to be uncomfortable. You've got to drive an extra 20 minutes to get to where you really need to be. So be willing to be uncomfortable in the drive, in the payments, and making your if you go monthly or weekly or quarterly, however often you go, be uncomfortable, make the sacrifice and do it. It's going to be worth it. That's one case where I could say an ounce of prevention is definitely worth a pound of cure, because we don't necessarily, especially us Wonder Woman, super women, we don't take the time to deal with ourselves and our emotional health, our psychological issues, or needs, the things that are dumped on us over and over and over and over. And before you know it, we're so packed full of stuff. By the time we do get to a therapist, we have to spend the first month or two just unpacking what we've got before we can figure out what it is we're trying to do. So that being the case, just be well. I want everybody to be well. I have a therapist. Actually, I have two. I've got a female who, she's kind of like general, but she does share some knowledge of autoimmune, people with autoimmune conditions and how they impact the body, as well as the spirituality. And she's a black female. And so those are things that are important for me, because those are the windows through which my eyes see. My eyes see through being a black female, through having this autoimmune condition, and through my spirituality. So we're able to look at the picture through a similar set of eyes, yet she's detached from the situation, so her input can be less biased. And then I have a therapist that deals strictly with trauma, just because for those of you who know my history, there is some trauma there. And so, and if I get to a point where I feel like something is getting triggered, then I just call and say, hey, look, I need to come get a couple visits, and I feel like I'm being triggered, and I just want to touch base with you and make sure I'm on point, or, whatever the case may be. Schedule a couple visits. How you doing? What's going on? Yeah, you're all right. You're getting triggered, and you probably want to think about this and think about that, and make whatever adjustments I need to make and keep it moving. So that's that. That's my time. Actually, I'm 2 minutes more. I didn't want to pass 30 minutes, and I've made 33 minutes. So you guys be safe. Let me know what you think. I would not suggest a therapist to anyone, only because I've not been actively keeping up with, especially in my area, who's who. There was a time when I did, and I could make some suggestions. But as a general rule, I don't necessarily make suggestions to people. But you can find them. Your insurance has them. Your Psychology Today is a good place to start. Or you can just go online and type, a therapist, or, psychologist. Psychologist, not psychiatrist, psychologist. Psychologist does not prescribe meds. Psychiatrists can prescribe meds, so you want to be careful with those. So, or LCSW, licensed clinical social workers, they don't prescribe meds either, or they usually don't, depending on, it could be a LCSW and a psychiatrist. They might have both distinctions, because, they've done the training. But you want to be mindful of those kinds of things. So stay away from the meds, because there's always, in my opinion, an alternative. If there's a physiological mental health condition, or even psychological, in my opinion, my personal opinion now, there's always some other ways to counteract that stuff to get you to a point of living life without having to have meds. Because the meds are going to destroy some other part of your body. They don't tell you that, but they will. That's just what I've witnessed firsthand in my life, and in watching other people, and working in the mental health arena as a certified mental health officer way back in the day, and then just advocating for others in my life experiences, the mental health meds will do some damage, and possibly, depending on what you take and how long you take it, you may not be able to correct that damage. So I say stay away from them, try everything else first, and then if those other things don't work, then, if there's a need, you look at meds. So be safe, take care, and I'll see you guys the next time around.